So let's talk about the new book, Mark, and really the roots of the Illuminati.
Well, I mean, to get to the roots of the Illuminati, it would be essentially the same organization, just not called the Illuminati. I mean, we'd have to go back to the mystery schools in ancient Greece and in ancient Babylon. And it's interesting because, and I talk about this in the Illuminati Facts and Fiction, back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, when society started to become more knowledgeable about the world and about who we are and about how nature works and science, they formed the mystery schools. And so there's one way to look at this, and even according to Manly P. Hall, he says that the mystery schools were of the highest standards, and that they were organizations of men and then within these schools they had been taught sort of these mystical teachings and spiritual teachings and scientific teachings in the sense of a secret society. And so Manly P. Hall says that the mystery schools became corrupt. And so there's a debate as to, well, maybe the mystery schools were not just this cabal of evil men, but they started off as a group of people that wanted to learn more about the nature of science and the nature of reality, essentially. And so it's understandable that this knowledge got them to be egotistical and ultimately selfish and greedy and powerful, and power corrupts, and power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So even if some of these ancient mystical teachings about the world and about philosophical beliefs and scientific beliefs and metaphysical beliefs were benign, were not, in a sense, evil, what has happened within these organizations, the mystery schools, became corrupt from men that obviously took that knowledge of everything important, and instead of freely giving it to everybody, they decided to create this hierarchical structure and then keep the knowledge for themselves, use it for their advantage at the expense of others, and then also dispense false information to the masses. And so that would be what I would call the roots of what we call the Illuminati, were the mystery schools of Greece and Babylon, where these ancient cultures formed these secret societies in the form of mystery schools, which then evolved into the Illuminati. And there's a couple noticeable groups that precede the actual Illuminati. Adam Weishaupt's organization, founded in Germany in 1776.
So really this is an incremental organization that used compartmentalization within themselves and then disinformation to the masses to keep control. And we're going to talk about that on the other side. I also want to talk about this book that you've republished, Proofs of Conspiracy and its origins, and its author, John Robinson. We're talking to Mark Dice. This is the Info Warrior. Go check out prisonplanet.tv, Infowars.com, and, of course, my new YouTube channel. In this segment, Mark, I want to talk about Proofs of a Conspiracy and the new book, Illuminati Facts and Fiction, and really just discuss the 1776 branding of the Illuminati with Weishaupt. I guess they're coming out party with that name.
Yes. Now, let me just finish up with the Knights Templar sort of were a 13th century, 12th century group of what grew into the Illuminati and what grew into Freemasonry. And there's a lot of information about the Knights Templar discovering some sort of documents or learning some sort of mystical, magical, black magic techniques from some of the Muslim assassins, from a really radical sect of Islam. And many historians admit that there was contact between the two and that they had learned some sort of rituals that were heretical and some sort of philosophical beliefs that were completely heretical to the Catholic Church at the time. And then the Knights Templar formed sort of an inner circle within the Knights Templar. So for those who don't know, the Knights Templar were basically a group of knights that went and allegedly, and to some extent did on the outer levels, protect some of the peasants and travelers that were traveling to Israel or to the Holy Land back between during the Crusades. So maybe from like 1100 to the early 1300s, when they were They were disbanded, and the Catholic Church had most of the leadership rounded up and arrested, and they confessed, a lot of them confessed that they were doing these weird rituals and that they had worshipped Baphomet and done these very strange black magic practices. Now, some people will say that they were tortured, which they were, and that the confessions were coerced and that they're really innocent, but occultists actually believe that the Knights Templars that were doing these rituals and that they went underground and that knowledge was taken and hidden into Freemasonry, and then the Freemason lodges were established and sort of evolved from a stoneman's guild, workers' guild, into gentlemen's clubs in about the 1700s, early 1700s, and then sort of evolved their hierarchical structure and continued to grow. And then Adam Weishaupt comes on the scene in 1776 in Germany and basically created what we call the Illuminati now, which, of course, many of the listeners know just means enlightened one. And so he formulated and sort of modernized the Illuminati, this with the idea of this group of elect, this secret society of special enlightened men, like a mafia, to then take over power and to overthrow the monarchs which were ruling Europe then, and then to replace them with their people and their men with their goals. And he formulated specific plans on how to do this, and they would write down their plans and send them out to their other members, and these writings were discovered and published. And one of the people to publish those was a man named John Robison, and the English version of his book is published in 1798. So that's correct, 1798. So over 200 years ago, this book was published. He was a Scottish Freemason, and he was a writer. He wrote for the Encyclopedia Britannica, and he was a philosophy professor of natural philosophy, which meant scientist, essentially, back then. And so he took the writings that were discovered from the original Illuminati members, Adam Weishaupt included, which fully are admitted to be legitimate. They were discovered. They were published in German, and so people have translated them into English, and Robison was one. And so he published some of these writings, actually probably almost all of them. And so Robison's book was basically, it would float in and out of print, and I took the liberty of republishing it. So you can now get the book from Infowars.com or from MarkDice.com, Proofs of a Conspiracy. It actually has a very, very lengthy title, Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe Carried On in Secret Meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and Reading Societies, but it's been kind of shortened. People call it Proofs of a Conspiracy. And so I think it's extremely important to go back to really the original English, unless you know German, to get the original translations from the German writings of Adam Weishaupt. And so I thought it was very important. And in the Resistance Manifesto, and to some extent in the Illuminati Facts and Fiction, I also sourced Robison and Abby Burrell, who was another individual that wrote about the Illuminati and published English versions of their works, again, back in the late 1700s. So I think that these are crucial. And if you know, I've talked about this before, and I like to go back to the fundamentals, but if you really look at Adam Weishaupt's own words, it becomes apparent that they wanted to take over the printing houses, that they wanted to use, this is back then, they wanted to use feminism to break down society.